Jonathan Lee Riches Investigates. I am covering the Moscow, Idaho Bryan Kohberger case. We are going to talk about phones, telephones seized by authorities with the Moscow, Idaho case. Phones of the victims taken as evidence. Bryan Kohberger, suspect, arrested by authorities in connection with the brutal stabbings that occurred November 13th, 2022. Telephones, evidence, folks. The family of Kaylee Gonzalez, they recently spoke about their daughter, Kaylee. One of the victims, there has been 4 victims in this case: Ethan, Xana, Madison, and Kaylee. And the family of Kaylee Gonzalez spoke around the 1-year anniversary. It's been 1 year, folks, since this tragedy occurred. And when they spoke to Brian Enton with News Nation, they shared some information about Kaylee's phone I want to share with all of you. I'm going to play this clip right here, and then we will further discuss. Check it out.
Well, you mentioned like going through her phone, like there was pictures and...
Well, I was going through my messages with her on my phone.
On your phone?
Yeah.
Okay, just
And we
going
don't
through
have
old messages.
hers. Yeah.
We're trying to get her
I
phone.
can't wait to get hers one day, someday.
That's all still in evidence, obviously.
Some people got backups, but we never got one. There was more complications with Kaylee's phone, so.
But going through your old messages is...
Yeah, I just did.
comforting.
I haven't gone back and read through them, and over the weekend I started reading, scrolling through and reading some of our messages.
I could have my phone out and Kaylee would just grab it and say, "Dad, we're taking photos." Yeah, any of the girls will do that.
And you literally be like, "Oh my gosh, will you stop taking photos?
And
like,
then
is
they
that all
just-
you do?"
And then you just send them to their
And
phone.
and she'd be like, and I'd be like, "Oh my god," I'd be like, "Stop, like, don't get away," like I run
Different
and hide
generation.
from the camera. Yes, and I'm like, I'm so thankful. Like I yelled at her so many times, be like, "Put your phone away now. Don't you snap another picture."
Do you still, I think you mentioned to me, like, did you or do you still text her phone? I mean,
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, she hasn't got it turned off.
So you pay the bill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
we hope to get it back. We eventually should get it back.
Is it comforting texting her?
Yeah, it's usually when, it just sucks because you just want her to reply so bad. So bad. And I go to our last message all the time, and it's just crazy to me because I remember exactly where I was, what I was doing, what we were talking about. Me and Steven were out when she sent me that picture. And I would have never known that Kaylee would be dead in 12 hours from that picture. And Maddie. Never.
Okay, so the family of Kaylee Gonzalez, Steve and Christy Gonzalez, her parents, shared some information about Kaylee's phone. They have still not received Kaylee's phone back from authorities. They seized it. Probably most likely seized the other victims' phones. Maybe even seized the roommates' phones. But notice Steve Gonzalez, Kaylee's father, said that some of them got backups back, but Kaylee's family didn't get phone back. Backup? I don't know what backup means. But what is in Kaylee's phone that was so interesting in this case in reference to Bryan Kohberger that authorities want to keep and still not give back to Kaylee's parents? Is there evidence in that phone, Kaylee's phone, that points towards Bryan Kohberger to build the case stronger against Kohberger as it already is? Kohberger is arrested. If you read the affidavit of probable cause in his case, it's very strong with a lot of circumstantial evidence, including direct evidence of his DNA left at the crime scene. But authorities usually, in cases, when there's victims in the case, usually they process a phone and then give the phone back to a loved one or a designated person, power of attorney, whoever. But with this particular case, they still have Kaylee's phone. Why? Was there something inside that phone that authorities are going to use against Bryan Kohberger? I also thought possibly Kaylee and Madison, 2 of the victims, there's 4, were on the 3rd floor in this case. And Kohberger apparently left the knife sheath with his DNA by Madison Moken's body. I'm just wondering if any blood, and I don't want to get graphic here, folks, but I'm just wondering if any of the blood from there went onto Kaylee's phone. And that's why authorities have it still. Why aren't they providing the parents backup on this phone that belongs to Kaylee? Now, I have another question. Kaylee's mom, she still texts Kaylee. This is part of the victims' families, of what they go through when it comes to these crimes. She still texts her, she says, and hoping that she texts back. Very, very, very sad, folks. And also said that she apparently texted Kaylee for the last time November 12th in the afternoon. 12 hours later, her daughter's dead. But going inside the phones of these victims, and even Bryan Kohberger's phone, because his phone got seized too. What can authorities get in there? What can authorities get in that phone? Pings, right? Photographs, texts, apps, certain apps in certain phones that can bury the defendant or build a case stronger against the defendant. What was in those phones? Now, I read something here about phones being seized and how you can get them back. Police will usually try to hold onto a phone until the investigation or case is over. If you want it back sooner, you should speak with a lawyer about filing a petition for return of property. Now, the Gonzalez didn't do that. They're victims. And this is kind of talking about as if the perpetrator got their phone seized. But it looks like, according to what we're hearing, this case is going to be dragged out for years. Will Kaylee's family not get back her phone until the end of this case, which could be 2025, 2026, 2027? But the phones, I think, when it comes to the Bryan Kohberger case, is going to be a crucial part of this case. Not only the phones seized, from the victims, seized, and I'm sure authorities took it against the family's wishes. Not sure if the family really has a say, because if the phone, well, actually the Gonzalez does, because they said the phone was in, Steve's paying the bill. Assuming it's in his name, if he's still paying the bill. The phone is still active. But sometimes the victims' families really don't have a say because they don't own the phone. Whoever owns the phone, and that's usually the victims, right? Usually the phones are in the victims' names. They're not around anymore. So more or less, it's not even the victims' families' right to have back, or maybe. But at the end of this case, would you want your phone back if it got taken by authorities? Regardless of, if you were a victim of a crime, you would think you would want your phone back. So we'll see what happens with that particular case. But phones, not only just with the victims, but with Bryan Kohberger's case. Cell phone pings. They were saying that, 12 times prior, he was in the Moscow area around the 1122 King Road where the crimes occurred. That evidence is most likely going to be used against them. CAST, folks. FBI CAST. It's a very strong, and I think it's going to pinpoint. But here's the thing. Motive, too. Was Bryan Kohberger communicating with any of the victims prior to this crime? We don't hear evidence out there because there's a gag order in this case. But I think over time, some of that might possibly be leaked to the public over time. Or if not, at trial, if we even go to trial, then we'll get to hear all the evidence that they have against Bryan Kohberger. Unless you feel like Bryan Kohberger didn't do this crime. But they're seeking the death penalty against Kohberger as if he did it. And you just don't seek the death penalty against innocent people, or do you? Has innocent people been put to death before in this country? Cell phone. I believe cell phones will be a critical part of this case And I think that will be one of the nail in Bryan Kohberger's coffin. Or you think any of the cell phone stuff on Kohberger's end or the victims can exonerate Bryan Kohberger? Do you think any of it will, not guilty, and the jury's come back and says, no, this isn't the guy? Because cell phone proof that Bryan Kohberger was driving around without an alibi in the middle of the night or something in that sense. A lot of unknowns, people, but we are following the Moscow, Idaho case. I am JLR Investigate. Subscribe to my channel, hit the notification button. Let me know what you think about Kaylee's cell phone, the victim's cell phones, and Bryan Kohberger's cell phones. Will the evidence be in there to convict him, exonerate him, or it doesn't matter? We'll talk soon. Stay tuned.